My wife and I were excited about returning to Amanalco in March 2015 to present my book to the people there, hang out with our compadres in Buena Vista, and document changes since our last visit in 2010. This video narrates a visit to the community. We eagerly anticipated meeting both Miguel Osario, director of the new Miyot Cultural Center, and Sergio Mendez, the young artist whose mural at the center graces the book's cover. These two young men were also instrumental in developing a new museum in Amanalco's main public building and had organized presentations about my book in both their community and the city of Texcoco. Driving a rental car from the airport to Amanalco, much of the landscape seemed unchanged, but a few things stood out. First was the new entrance art welcoming travelers into the community. As we passed into the heart of town, I began to notice stores highlighting an increased emphasis on the internet, and flyers for my upcoming talk displayed on the fronts of buildings. I was amazed to see an increased public use of Amanalco's indigenous language printed on some stores, such as this enterprise advertising seeds in both Spanish as semillas and in Nahuatl as xinachtli. Another dramatic change was the greater daily use by children of Amanalco Central Plaza, updated in 2012. Here, children pouring out of the adjacent public school lingered to use the new playground equipment and consume sugary sweets. We turn once again to our home in Amanalco, greeted by two of the residential grandchildren of our compadres. At Buena Vista, the newer building on the left was now complete for the brother of our compadre Juan Velasquez, housing his small family and their aging mother Concha. In the original house, a second story was being added for Juan and his wife, along with their 21-year-old unmarried daughter. The lower level housed their son Gordo, his wife, and their two young children. That night, most of the lineage linked to Buena Vista assembled for a festive meal, and afterwards I passed around a copy of my book and we looked at some parts of its website containing various videos about their family and the region. Before the night was over, we had a visit from Miguel Osario, and we discussed the presentation of my book to the community, taking place the next day. Despite the threat of rain, the activity of school letting out, and a Taekwondo class of the Miyot Cultural Center going on, about 100 people from the community sat patiently as a local instructor of their indigenous language introduced the event in both Nahuatl and Spanish. A panel of people, including community officials, politicians from Texcoco, Mexican anthropologists Tomas Martinez and Manuel Moreno, spoke briefly, introducing my work and its relevance to the region. In presenting the scope of the book, I talked about how, in 1972, I came to live in Amanalco and the many changes I observed over the past 4 decades. I then read from a Spanish translation of Chapter 4, dealing with some comical aspects of my first day in Amanalco, trying to explain to community leaders why, as an anthropology graduate student, I wanted to live in their village. 2 days after this presentation, a similar one was carried out in the Central Library of Texcoco. This time, the young artist Sergio Mendez was there, back from his university in another state. While this event was similar to the one in Amanalco, I made sure there was an emphasis on the discussion of the new museum in the community and the mural at its entrance. Earlier that day, the young artist explained to me the various meanings of his artwork called Rayos de Luz, or Rays of Light, symbolizing in his words the construction of a world based on the roots of the community. Here is a woman holding a basket representing the earth giving us its fruits, if we know how to work and respect the land. We have here a young couple who have made a life commitment to each other, and they are set in a chiquihuite basket and surrounded by symbolic flowers, which represents the family's acceptance of their relationship. Next is a young boy whose head is encased in a musical instrument. As it is blown, the air becomes wings, carrying to the present the great musical traditions of this community. The boy has in his hands a blank musical score, so that it is now up to the younger generation to write new songs of the future. This top central figure is an older woman representing one of the few females who still weave the Ixtli fiber from the century plant cactus. I use this image to help people fondly remember their mothers and grandmothers who did this in the past. Following clockwise is a representation of the high mountain springs, symbolizing water and women as the sources of life. She pours water from a vase from which also flows trout, now being farmed in the high mountain area fed by the springs. Next is a representation of the extraordinary common effort of the community 100 years ago to sell a huge amount of charcoal in order to buy the beautiful pipe organ still used in our church. An axe is wielded in a sea of flames to produce the balls of charcoal. Below that, a woman gives a blessing to her pregnant daughter, as this also travels to the child in her daughter's womb. The person in the center can be any one of us who comes from the bottom, but he has initiative and shows that by reaching out and inviting us to participate. In this way, he supports others to get more involved collectively and prods us to be creative. Finally, the central character toward the bottom molds the world to form it, so we can see it and he gives it to us. There are many hexagon shapes supporting this part, and I relate this with the structure of a beehive, where this collective must work together for the hive to survive. This beautiful mural links the panels created in a collaboration with young children in the community and stretches along walls depicting scenes of the plaza, children doing art and at school, a magical tree producing music, a local band, waterways, high mountains, and the traditional work of campesino grandparents. The art leads to the entrance of a new space called Museum of Nahuatl Men, Women, and Children of San Jeronimo Amanalco. At its entrance, my compadre Juan Velasquez checks out a panel of my photos from the early 1970s when I first lived in his parents' house. The other walls are covered with images depicting both traditional material culture, such as the red clay corn granary, called in Nahuatl a Quechcom, the enchanting high mountain waterways, practices of agricultural work, and weaving of cloths from Ixtli fiber. A centerpiece of the museum is a glass case filled with archaeological items people have found in the fields and given to the museum. Finally, in one corner is a display of folk art objects made from tough mountain grasses. I quickly came to realize that what I was observing in 2015 was part of a plan emerging in the community to get Amanalco designated in a federal tourist program as a Pueblo Mágico, or magical community. One aspect of this plan was improving town infrastructure, and there was now even a nicely paved road linking the town center to the higher mountain protected ecological zone. This is a potential ecotourism area. Here are found scenic mountain vistas, rivers, and springs, and a new trout farm development with a weekend fish restaurant. There was also an almost completed set of bathing pools near a river where last year hundreds of outsiders flocked during Easter's Semana Santa to ritually cleanse themselves. Standing by the trout farm, Miguel Osario related his dreams for the future. We have everything here for tourism. While we have lost some of our Nahuatl language, we still have many important traditions, our many myths, legends, artisans. Now the new museum and your book, our community is moving forward.